Back in the 1970s, a young, brash San Francisco Bay Area man in search of a direction in life took the advice given to him by a couple of fellows he met at a convention, and he moved to Las Vegas to become a news reporter. That didn't happen right off the bat, and for a brief period he worked as a taxi driver, but one who knew nothing of the lay of the land as a good taxi driver would. He eventually landed a job at the local CBS affiliate station KLAS, and basically covered what the other more tenured reporters didn't want to be bothered with. This included looking into mob corruption in and around Las Vegas and within the casinos and hotels in both Las Vegas and Sparks, Nevada. He had gotten several segments aired, and he began to make a name for himself in the Las Vegas television arena. That name was George Knapp. In the late 80s Learjet aviation era, John Lear came into the station to suggest a story for them to cover that involved a worker at a secret government research facility known as S4 out in the Nevada desert that was part of a larger facility called Dreamland, or Area 51. The lead night anchor wasn't interested in the story at all, and the ever-vigilant Knapp, who was eavesdropping on the conversation, approached Lear as he was leaving the station, having been turned down by the main news anchor man. George sat with Lear for quite some time as he explained a story that sounded too far-fetched to be true. This story was about a man who was doing reverse engineering on wrecked and captured spacecraft out at the S4 facility. That man was Bob Lazar, and his aired broadcast on KLAS by George Knapp forever altered George's life and his overall direction as a broadcast journalist. He became the UFO guy, even though the majority of his investigative journalism was still focused on the activities of the mob in and around Las Vegas and Nevada's gambling world. He produced periodic investigative stories over several decades and exposed unknown areas of the government that functioned behind a veil of secrecy and black budget projects. He became good friends with Senator Harry Reid, who sponsored funding to further investigate strange goings-ons in the skies above us all, and did so in conjunction with the Bigelow Corporation. He traveled to the USSR and obtained interviews and documents surrounding the Russians and their involvement in UFO activities and investigations of reported incidents. George Knapp's career has spanned many decades, and his groundbreaking stories have captivated audiences around the globe. This video is a bit of a homage to the great investigative journalist George Knapp, the OG of the UFO investigation world.
Who's now investigators?
When a mysterious object dubbed the Tic Tac UFO befuddled U.S. Navy aviators and sensors off the coast of San Diego in 2004, the incident was dropped, not investigated. The first in-depth probe happened 5 years later under the auspices of a then-secretive program called OSAP, the Advanced Aerospace Weapons Systems Application Program, created by the Defense Intelligence Agency with black budget funding spearheaded by Nevada Senator Harry Reid. Tic Tac was the first UFO incident tackled by OSAP and its contractor, Las Vegas aerospace pioneer Robert Bigelow. The report was released by us in 2018. Jay Stratton is the man who wrote it.
Every time I've done anything related to UAP or UFO has been my job. And what I mean by that, I didn't really have a passion growing up. I didn't have all the books. I didn't watch all the TV shows. I stepped into a job at the Defense Intelligence Agency where some things came across the desk.
From 2008 until 2021, pretty much everything UFO-related came across Jay Stratton's desk. He made the decision to ditch the term UFO and use UAP instead, unidentified aerial phenomena. Stratton worked at the highest levels of naval intelligence, then was loaned to the DIA, where he excelled at reverse engineering. He and his colleague, rocket scientist Dr. James Lakatsky, kept seeing reports of unknown craft, but learned there was no central location where such mysteries were being analyzed.
You know, all the stories you hear, right, there's probably the office that deals with this. And as we tried to find that office, we found nothing.
So they created one. Stratton's colleague, Dr. Lakatsky, had been reading about a UFO hotspot nicknamed Skinwalker Ranch. After a visit to the Utah property, Lakatsky pitched the creation of a formal investigation. Harry Reid agreed to fund it. Robert Bigelow landed the contract. Stratton consulted with the OSAP program and then with its successor, ATIP. When the head of ATIP, Lou Elizondo, resigned and revealed its existence to the New York Times in 2017, Stratton was asked by his boss if he he'd jump back in and cobble together a new program. He did, and that effort was eventually formalized by Congress with a new name, the UAP Task Force. One of Stratton's projects was the creation of a comprehensive but classified briefing that included UAP videos and photos collected by the military. Most of those images are still unreleased, but a few objects encountered off the East Coast and even stranger objects buzzing Navy ships on the West Coast were leaked, then publicized. Stratton scoffs at the debunkers who tried to explain them away as flares or drones or birds.
Oh, splashed.
So there's a lot of cleanup to do when you have a lot of these people saying it's birds or whatever they're saying. It's frustrating because you know the rest of the story and you can't tell the rest of the story.
In 2021, Stratton left the task force, but his work formed the basis of a stunning report to Congress. Stratton's chief scientist was Dr. Travis Taylor, now well known for his television appearances. Of 144 incidents investigated by the task force, 143 were considered unidentified. Stratton and Taylor now work for Radiance Technologies, a defense contractor with offices in 17 states, including Nevada. When Stratton and Taylor showed up in the audience of an Alabama UAP conference last summer, UFO circles were abuzz with questions about what their employer might be up to. Filmmaker Jeremy Corbell brought his cameras to record our interviews. Stratton admitted there are still more questions than answers.
You probably remember the infamous quote from Congress that, let's hope it's aliens.
George Knapp, 8 News Now.
Well, as you both know, the Department of Defense isn't exactly known for its transparency and honesty when it comes to UFO investigations. So why come clean about Kona Blue? To understand that, we have to explain what led up to Kona Blue and why Las Vegas would have been right there in the thick of it. Be forewarned, you will be exposed to dueling acronyms.
Why isn't it made obvious in any of the documentation that's been made public so far?
It was completely UFO related.
Dr. Jim Lakatsky spent most of his career as an intelligence analyst and missile expert for the DIA, the Defense Intelligence Agency. In 2007, he became interested in reports of UFO activity at certain hotspots, including a Utah property known today as Skinwalker Ranch. Lakatsky designed OSAP, the Advanced Aerospace Weapons Systems Application Program. He met with Nevada Senator Harry Reid, who helped secure $22 million in black budget funds. The contract was awarded to a subsidiary of Bigelow Aerospace. OSAP became the largest acknowledged UFO investigation in U.S. history, with 50 full-time employees, most of them based in southern Nevada. OSAP created the world's largest UFO data warehouse and produced more than 100 technical papers, though not one page from those reports has been made public by DIA. But Lakatsky and his Las Vegas colleague, Dr. Colin Kelleher, co-authored 2 books about OSAP, reporting as much as Pentagon censors would allow. In one book, Lakatsky revealed that back in 2011, he had informed a U.S. senator and a high-ranking official that, quote, the U.S. was in possession of a craft of unknown origin. The craft had no intakes, exhaust, wings, or control surfaces, no engine, fuel tanks, or fuel. In other words, the U.S. had a flying saucer. Since then, Lakatsky has declined to say more than what the Pentagon authorized.
There was more to it, considerably more to that discussion about what this situation was. We can't go into that.
But the public is now able to read much more between the lines because of the surprise release of a document declassified in February by the Department of Homeland Security. It describes a proposed UFO program codenamed Kona Blue. Not mentioned is that Kona Blue was drawn up by Lakatsky, Kelleher, and some OSAP colleagues as a successor to OSAP, and was intended to not only study but to exploit UFO technology. The papers do not mention UFOs, but there are plenty of clues. The purpose of Kona Blue was to, quote, identify potentially disruptive technologies by analyzing material of unique origin and engineering. Success would depend on gaining access to said materials. Kona Blue would establish a system to collect sightings of such technology, including at locations where there are frequent reports. There are references to advanced technology that's already been recovered. One section notes this recovered technology exists only within special access programs. Kona Blue would have created a medical division to study physical and psychological effects on humans from encounters with advanced aerial vehicles. And there's this chilling note that Kona Blue experts would, quote, handle and examine unusual and unique biological specimens.
What might those be? Like OSAP, Kona Blue would have been based in Las Vegas. The document notes that buildings already cleared to handle top-secret material were standing by. But in 2009, when Nevada Senator Harry Reid wrote to the Department of Defense to ask for a special classification for the DIA program, alarm bells were set off in Washington, opposition mounted, and the program's budget was pilfered. That's why in 2011, Lakatsky, Kelleher, and others tried to find another home for what they called Kona Blue. The document showed the Department of Homeland Security was briefed about what OSAP had learned. Deputy Secretary for Science and Technology, Dr. Tara O'Toole, was impressed enough to sign off on Kona Blue. But as with OSAP, when top officials began knocking on doors to ask for access to special materials stashed in secret cubbyholes, opposition to Kona Blue quickly mobilized, and the proposed program was stopped dead. To date, Dr. Lakatsky carefully measures his words when asked about the special materials they tried to access.
There's material and there's material. Are you talking about material to be investigated? In other words, pieces falling off flying saucers? Or are you talking about full-blown craft? You know, there's a big difference.
Oh, yeah. Kona Blue was declassified by AARO, which is the current UFO program, as a way to discredit evidence and testimony provided by witnesses and whistleblowers. The former head of AARO, Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, says the people who came forward to tell about crash saucers were all referring to Kona Blue. Of course, that is preposterous. Kona Blue never existed, and only a handful of people even knew it was proposed. So what witness says they saw crash saucers as part of Kona Blue? AARO says there are no crash saucer programs, but they will not release the testimony they received. Also, as a personal note, Dr. Lakatsky and Dr. Kelleher wrote those two books we mentioned in that story. I was also a contributor. They sent me out for coffee, things like that.
And just saying, well, just, disclose, doesn't answer any of that. Okay.
Jacques Vallée has been a central figure in UFO research and debate for more than 6 decades. He's often been at odds with UFO orthodoxy, was among the first to argue that the unknown craft seen for centuries in our skies and oceans may not be from other planets, but from other realities. He's heard the demands for an end to official secrecy many times, and at the same time has participated in secretive efforts himself, including a UFO study launched by the Defense Intelligence Agency in 2008 and hidden inside a Las Vegas aerospace company. One focus of the DIA's OSAP effort was and is genuinely disturbing: the real-life health consequences for humans who come into contact with UFOs. Hundreds of serious injuries have been documented. OSAP investigators traveled to Brazil to obtain government files related to hundreds of Brazilians treated for injuries after being targeted by UFOs. Dr. Vallée won't discuss specific OSAP files except for cases he provided to the database, injuries which he says were not accidental.
So I can tell you that in my files, some of which I contributed to the database, there are at least half a dozen well-documented cases where the injuries that resulted in death were deliberate.
Incidents in which UFOs deliberately cause physical harm to humans are rare, according to personnel who have seen the full OSAP files, but they do occur. Dr. Colm Kelleher, one of OSAP's managers, has said bluntly that UFOs are bad for human health. Could that be a reason to keep secrets? If there is some kind of non-human intelligence here, the secrecy starts with them. But governments, in particular the U.S. government, have created multiple other levels of secrecy.
The atomic secrecy, primarily, which most people in the Pentagon are not cleared for, and then the military secrecy and the strategic secrecy, and then the diplomatic secrecy.
In Dr. Vallet's most recent book, Forbidden Science, Scattered Castles, he shares private exchanges with colleagues from the OSAP program, including Las Vegas billionaire Robert Bigelow and a close-knit group of scientists nicknamed the Lone Stars. The scientists, some of them former CIA contractors, accept that the U.S. government has recovered crashed vehicles of unknown origin, that defense contractors have worked for decades to reverse engineer that technology at secretive facilities in the desert and elsewhere. They say adversary nations have done likewise. The race to duplicate that technology means national security is at stake. Vallet favors transparency, but worries that an official declaration could prove chaotic.
So if we want to disclose, even disclose something as simple as saying, yes, we acknowledge the phenomenon, and it seems to be from space, we would have to, once you do that, you have to answer 100 other questions. This is not the end. This is not the end of the story.
While Dr. Vallet is encouraged by the renewed interest in UFOs within Congress, mainstream media, and academia, he thinks someone needs to craft a well-planned strategy for how to unleash what would likely be the biggest news story in history.
I think we should disclose, that we should disclose with a structure, and the structure hasn't been invented yet.
George Knapp, 8 News Now.
But Las Vegas is known now as a racing town, but the most important race, perhaps on the planet, was headquartered right here. It was a race to see which nation would be the first to crack the code and replicate the propulsion system of these mysterious machines seen for decades in our skies and oceans. The race is real, and it's still underway.
We are in a race for the tech?
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
For more than 80 years, the U.S. government has told the public not to fret about UFO intrusions because nearly all of them are explainable. Behind the scenes, though, intelligence agencies and the Pentagon acknowledge there is a deadly serious contest to figure out UFO technology before Russia or China do. Nevada Senator Harry Reid told us before his death that the race is real and that we'd better win it, which is why he was the primary sponsor of a $22 million secret investigation.
And it's not our belief or conjecture or the opinion of the authors. It's facts from the program. These are from official sources, from what the public has paid for.
Dr. James Lakatsky spent most of his career with the DIA analyzing the technology of America's adversaries, weapons that could potentially wipe out the world. He was and is a keeper of secrets and regarded his oath and security clearance as gospel. But these days he is cautiously and meticulously sharing what he can about OSAP, the largest acknowledged UFO investigation ever funded by the U.S. government. Lakatsky designed and managed OSAP, inspired by a book he read about a UFO hotspot in a remote corner of Utah, a place now known as Skinwalker Ranch. Credible witnesses had reported seeing mysterious high-tech objects emerge from holes in the sky. Lakatsky believed this was a potential threat and also an opportunity.
You know, we wanted to learn what can be weaponized here. And basically that was our job at DIA.
Lakatsky visited the ranch, escorted by its owner, Las Vegas tycoon Robert Bigelow, had his own bizarre experience there, then convinced DIA leadership that an investigation was warranted. Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid and two of his Senate colleagues agreed, and OSAP was born. The program was housed within a subsidiary of Bigelow Aerospace, had a team of 50 full-time investigators, and conducted an unprecedented investigation in near-total secrecy. Lakatsky and his team produced an astounding amount of material, including 115 thick documents and the world's largest UFO data warehouse. 14 years after OSAP ended, the DIA has yet to release any of the original material. Lakatsky is doing it himself. His latest book, New Insights Inside the U.S. Government's UFO Program, makes the case that UFOs and paranormal phenomena related to UFOs are generated by someone or something that is not us.
Can we say they're not human?
I don't think you can. We can be pretty well sure we're not dealing with humans.
The material in the book is from government files, compiled by government personnel in a government-funded program. It may not count as official disclosure, but it's in the same ballpark. New Insights includes remarkable UFO incidents, cases in which airline pilots were followed by huge unknown craft which changed shapes while in the air, eyewitnesses who experienced inexplicable physiological changes after their close encounters, others who suffered major medical consequences, outbreaks of bizarre paranormal phenomena, and entities in the homes of dozens of people who had earlier seen orbs, triangles, or other weird craft. Newly unveiled events from in and around the Utah ranch are the stuff of nightmares, including creature sightings, macabre animal mutilations, and even an incident from the oddities known as the Men in Black. Lakatsky flat out admits the government has in its possession at least one recovered craft of unknown origin, a flying machine with no wings, no engine, no fuel tanks.
How do you know it's a craft if it has no fuel tank? You didn't actually see it fly, or I mean, are you convinced it is some sort of a craft, a machine?
Yes. And by the way, Senator Reid asked the same question.
They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west.
Like the late senator, Lakatsky has no doubt our adversaries have their own programs to reverse engineer UFO tech. The OSAP program completed almost everything it was designed to do in its 27-month existence. After that, the funding was suddenly paused. Fingers are pointed at multiple possible culprits, but Lakatsky now reveals the person responsible was Harry Reid himself. The senator confided to Lakatsky there was a spy in his Washington office who was leaking information to help the candidacy of Reid's 2010 opponent, Sharon Angle. Reid was widely expected to lose that race.
So he's worried that the story gets out, it affects his race, and he'd no longer be a U.S. senator.
And it would have.
Reid surprisingly won that race in a cakewalk, but afterward was no longer the majority leader of the Senate. He was minority leader. Lakatsky says Reid kept his word and secured funding for OSAP to continue in some form. We'll explore that part of the story in a future report. And as a matter of disclosure, I was the journalist who was allowed to know about OSAP while it was underway, and later was a co-author of two earlier books by Dr. Lakatsky and his colleague, Dr. Colm Kelleher. I had no hand in this current book, New Insights. Pretty good stuff, though. Things get a little weird here. Back in that era, 2008 to 2011, I had heard the name Dr. Jim Lakatsky a few times, mostly in hushed whispers. I finally met him face-to-face on St. Patrick's Day, 2018, at a meeting in D.C. arranged by Senator Reid. That's when I received a full download about OSAP that stunned me. What they found in this sprawling UFO investigation is that these unknown craft, whatever they are, seem to generate spooky phenomena that seemingly shouldn't exist.
And we heavily went into Skinwalker Ranch, property of Robert Bigelow's. He offered a facility where we could see UFOs and the paranormal at once in one location.
How did this ranch in northeastern Utah, previously owned by Las Vegas aerospace tycoon Robert Bigelow, become a key part of the government's classified UFO investigation? It started at DIA, the Defense Intelligence Agency, where rocket scientist and intelligence analyst Dr. James Lakatsky and a colleague, Jay Stratton, became both puzzled and alarmed by reports about UFO intrusions at many of our nation's most sensitive national defense facilities. Residents of the Uinta Basin in northeastern Utah had been reporting frequent UFO incidents for decades, probably longer. And the Bigelow Ranch was deemed an epicenter of weird activity, not just UFOs, but also unknown creatures, things that presumably exist only in myths or movies.
Okay.
Bigelow's organization, NIDS, moved on to the ranch, and its team of scientists and investigators began collecting testimony from residents, then started seeing the creatures and phenomena for themselves. Lakatsky, Stratton, and the bosses at DIA were intrigued, not repelled, by the wild stories. They wanted to know if UFOs and the seemingly related paranormal incidents might be considered a threat.
Because I could see from my organization the threat potential, and we weren't covering many of the things you were observing. Strange creatures. I mean, think of inducing these, what might be called illusions by some people, into an enemy force. We wanted to learn what what can be weaponized here?
Lukatsky and Stratton put together a program which DIA approved. The acronym was OSAP. Senator Harry Reid helped secure the funding, and Bigelow Aerospace was the contractor. 50 full-time investigators were hired, obtained top-secret security clearances, and went to work. The main focus was UFOs and UFO technology, but one smaller focus was measurable health effects on people who encountered a UFO and were physically harmed or developed rare diseases, including psychological effects. That allowed OSAP to cast a wide net and to report seemingly outlandish stories about creatures, poltergeist-type activity, and other weirdness. Dr. Lukatsky says that OSAP created a massive database of UFO accounts, but the witnesses were typically reluctant to admit that they had also had paranormal experiences after encountering UFOs.
We realized that people who openly say and are confident enough to say, I observed a UFO up close, maybe on the ground, that they always seem to have a paranormal connection in some way if you gently push them.
Perhaps the strangest experience reported by nearly everyone in OSAP who visited the Bigelow Ranch is what is now known as the hitchhiker effect. At least 5 highly experienced intelligence officers who went to the ranch to check things out came into contact with paranormal phenomena and then took it home with them. They and their families would see balls of light inside their homes, shadowy figures, even creatures that were physical, not merely a mental image. After one investigator returned from the ranch to his East Coast home, his entire family was bedeviled by orbs and what they described as a wolf that walked on 2 legs.
The one here in the Washington area, and that's why you have to say paranormal. I mean, what did it get in a train or plane and come to Washington? It left deep scratch marks on the tree it was resting against. There was physical evidence.
After the existence of OSAP was first reported by us in 2018, and the full scale of the strange phenomena it had examined was made public by Dr. Lukatsky in his books, including the newest one, New Insights, skeptics claimed the DIA had killed OSAP at the end of 2010 because the reports it received were simply too weird.
Did they ever have the opinion that, oh gosh, this is getting kind of weird?
No, they never did. They basically wanted kept quiet. That's all. They didn't want to see it in the Washington Post.
Lukatsky and others familiar with OSAP tried to find a new home, a spin-off version, something called Kona Blue. Harry Reid helped lead that charge, and the Department of Homeland Security initially said yes, then higher-ups killed it. Lukatsky's new book hints that some slice of Kona Blue did move forward, but he declines to spill further details about that for now.
We here all want to thank Mr. Knapp for all the great reporting he has done over the years, and his recent work in collaboration with Jeremy Corbell seems to indicate that his work on this topic is far from over, and we look forward to each and every account he puts out. Folks, please take a moment to like and subscribe if you haven't already done so. This helps us a great deal as we strive to create engaging content for our viewers, and be sure to hit the notification bell so that you're notified when new content is released.